All right, it is 3 o'clock. We are beginning. Hello, my name is Alex Riviere. I am a front-end senior developer at Hygiena, which is a fantastic company that makes stuff for the food manufacturing industry. And I work specifically on a piece of software that helps track sanitization and scheduling for manufacturing equipment in the food industry. So we have a lot of very interesting clients, and we have a lot of very interesting problems. But my boss allows me to come to conferences and speak, and supports me doing that, so I want to give my job a shout out. So thanks, Hygiena. I am here today because we're going to talk about HTML. If you have an allergic reaction to Comic Sans, you should probably leave now. There's gonna be a lot of it. I love handwritten fonts, and so I do not apologize at all for any of my font choices. If you want a copy of the slides, here is a QR code to the slide deck that I am actively doing things in. You'll be able to follow along if you want to. You'll also be able to save this for later because this slide deck is going to be a lot of links to documentation about the things that I'm talking about. So you will have resources when you go, there's that guy who talked about that thing and he had links to it. And you can go and look up more information on your own. To set the stage, we should talk about HTML, and specifically we're going to talk about HTML5. HTML5 started being drafted in 2004 by the WWG, which is, oh, and I don't have my speaker notes. It stands for something, the Web something Technology Working Group. And it is the group that really started working on the HTML5 standard. There was a bit of controversy at the time between WWG and W3C because some people wanted XHTML. We also have that went. So at some point they reconciled. W3C saw their ways, and we got the HTML5 standard reached the recommended status in 2014. After that, in 2019, control of the standard moved over fully to WWG, and it is now a living standard. So we no longer have versions of HTML, we just have a living standard. So it just sort of is, right? Which means that I can't be like, so in HTML6 we're going to have, we don't do that. It's just HTML now. So everything that I'm going to talk about today is in the living standard. Some of it you can use today, and you should start using today. Some of it you might want to wait a little bit. But it will work in at least one browser. Hopefully. So all of that is to say, this is sort of the history of HTML, right? Like we haven't had a quote-unquote new standard in well over 10 years at this point. But we have a living standard, so things are sort of updating on the go, right? Now, meanwhile, we have JavaScript, which has its versions of coming out sort of every year. It has a standardized versioning number of, we had, ES 2015, which is ES6, and then like every year they've sort of released a new version that has more and more features. And we've gotten a lot of new features in JavaScript over the past 10 years or so. And it's really changed how we write JavaScript. Similarly, CSS has had a bit of a renaissance in the last few years. This is a list that I've put in a marquee of all of the features that have been implemented in all three major browsers in CSS over the last 2 years. There are 275 features that have been added to the browsers in CSS. I have another slide that shows it for the last 5 years, and it's around 600. So like CSS has been having like a major resurgence in a big way. And if you missed Catherine's talk earlier today about some of the cool new things in CSS, you should absolutely go watch the video when you have the opportunity. So all of that being said, over the last 10 years, HTML has, gotten 100 new features, 16 of which have been since last year. You know, not numbers are, size isn't important, but it's a little bit slower, we'll say. So when we get a new feature in HTML, it's a doozy, right? Like we get something real cool when we get something in HTML. So we're going to talk about a few things today. I'm going to talk about details and summary, which I'm sure a lot of you know about details and summary already, but I can tell you right now, probably don't know everything. We're going to talk about the dialog element, which, once again, Catherine touched on in her talk earlier today. We're going to talk about the inert attribute. We'll get there. We're going to talk about the Popover API, because it's fancy and cool and like, ooh. We're also going to talk about the adder function. Has anybody here ever used the adder function? 3 hands. Wow. OK. Well, y'all are about to be able to use it more. Like it's great. We're going to talk about declarative ShadowDOM, which Burton just touched on in his last talk. And then we're going to talk about select elements, which, once again, y'all think you know about, but you don't. So we're going to talk about details and summary elements first. I like to call these, hide extra information. The way that a details element works, for those of you who have never seen a details element, you put things inside of a details element, and by default, it collapses the element and gives you a nice little button that when you click on the button, it opens up. Yay! Super handy. It allows you to hide information. It's great. We love the details element. But the problem with just using a details element is that you just get this thing that says details. That's not useful. So that's where the other half of this pair comes in, is the summary element. The summary element lets you say what the text is that you are doing. It is the summary. Semantics. So once again, with a details and summary, you can now click on the summary, and it will expose the information inside of the details element. Very simple, very straightforward, very useful. You can put this in your GitHub profile if you want to, and you can get a lot more information in there and let people expand things. But sometimes we have a details, and we actually want it to start open so that you can optionally collapse that. Good news. That has existed for a while. There's the open attribute that allows you to have it start open, and then it will close. So this has been around for a while. Hopefully, who here has used details? A lot more hands. OK, good. Whew, I was going to be real worried if no hands went up. OK, so the thing that's new, though, that we'll talk about is people have looked at the details, and they're like, if you put 3 of those together, you could have an accordion. But there hasn't been a way to do it effectively just in HTML. You've had to do some JavaScript tomfoolery like this, where you add an event listener, and then you go through all of the ones that you want to, and then you collapse the other ones, right? It's this whole thing. And so with this JavaScript, we're able to it'll sort of collapse things around as you need to and whatnot, and that's fine and dandy. Wouldn't it be great if we could just do this in HTML? Okay. So now we can. We have the new name attribute. So much like a radio button, input type radio, where you can say name, blah, and all of the radio inputs that have the blah name are the same input. It's just which value you're going to choose. Details works the same way. You give a bunch of detail elements the same name, and now they all work in tandem with no JavaScript. This is available in, hopefully, yes, this is available in all browsers and has been since September of last year. So you can go use this. And guess what? If it doesn't work in the browser, you can add some JavaScript to make it work really easily, because it's pretty straightforward. So there you go. That is the new name attribute. Now, I know what you're thinking to yourself. You're thinking to yourself, details are great, but I have tried styling a details element before, and there's content in there, and that was a pain in the butt to style, right? Because you can't just do details display block, because if you do that, then it's always open. So you have to do details open display block, and then like animate things, and you're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff where like you need to listen for the thing and then apply like a class and then do all of the like flip class applying stuff, right? Like it's a whole thing. I got you. There's a new : details content pseudo selector that will not pick the summary, but it will pick everything else inside of the details element and allow you to style that. On top of that, there's some new CSS features that allow you to do some fancy stuff. But basically, you can do content visibility on the details content. You can transition it. And if you say allow discrete, that'll do, what it'll do is that that'll cause it to apply that first and then attempt to transition all the other things. So if you have things that do not have an intermediate state, display none to display block, or what have you, you can now use the allow discrete keyword in your transition to allow it to transition gracefully. And so what that looks like when we do it is it allows it to, this is all just CSS now. It allows it to gracefully open and close in a nice, smooth motion. And it works with this one as well. Very fancy. Now, the support for this is pretty good, except for Firefox. I'm not too disappointed in them, but I'm a little disappointed in them. It's fine. You know, they've got their own stuff going on. It's okay. But I'm hoping that by the end of the year, it will be available, maybe, if somebody gets their stuff together. Yeah, so you can, for the most part, you can use this. This is a good progressive enhancement, because if you don't have it available, then it's just going to like open and close, right? Like it still works. It doesn't stop anything from working. For more information about all of this, I have 3 really good resources here. I'm always going to link to MDN for whatever topic it is that we're talking about. But there's a couple of good articles. There's one over at the Chrome developer blog, and there's another one at CSS Tricks that talk more about styling the details and summary and like how the name stuff actually works as far as interaction. All right, let's talk about dialogue, also known as modals. I was going to call this section AKA please subscribe to our newsletter and save 10% on your next purchase, but I thought that was a little too on the nose, so I didn't. So the dialog element is a new element that does magic things, and it introduces a whole new thing called the top layer. Who here has ever had to fight with z-index? Dialog solves that. So the way that dialog works, we'll take a look at it really fast, ta-da, is that it will, when it is open, it gets placed in a thing called the top layer, which is a new woo-woo space in the browser. You can, in the main document, you can do something at z-index infinity, and it will never be higher than the top layer. The top layer will always be higher than that, right? So we've created this new layer of stacking context that you cannot say, hey, take this element, this random element, and put it into the top layer. Nope, doesn't work like that. There are only certain things that can go in there. Dialog is one of them. And so if we have a dialog, we can start with it open using the open keyword, much like the details and summary, which is great. However, if you do this, there's no way to close it. Oh, wow, it's really angry about that. OK. There's no way to close it. Please hold while I go back to full screen. And it's not a great experience, right? You're just going to have this thing sort of hovering at the top of the screen. It's not good. Nobody wants that. That's not useful, right? So we need to add some stuff to make this work a little bit better. Now, I'm going to do some JavaScript here. I know this is an HTML talk, but bear with me. We're going to do some JavaScript. So you can toggle it to open using the show and close methods of the dialog element. So for instance, I can toggle it open, toggle it closed. Yay, we now have control of it. Super great, we love this. This is fantastic. We can also call another function called showModal. ShowModal displays the new : background pseudo element. And what that looks like is more of what you're thinking of when I say a modal. There's a background element that causes it to be that I can't click that button anymore. Thank you, Apple. So I can't click anything behind that background anymore. However, I think if I do this right, and it's not gonna mess up on me. Nope, still not. Okay, cool. Good job, Alex. Love this. This is great. Did not practice this beforehand, as you can tell. So we can, but now it is fixed in a way that we can still scroll. And there are ways with CSS that we can stop the scrolling from happening, so it really just sort of goes like, boom, done. But I am leaving it unstyled at the moment so that you can see what an unstyled dialog looks like. So the next trick is we need a way to close it, right? Now you could put a button inside of the dialog and then like add more JavaScript and stuff like that. But the people who came up with dialog thought of this and they were like, we should really have a way just in HTML to be able to close this. So there is a new thing that you can do where you can put a form inside of a dialog and make it method dialog and then add a submit button to it. And when you do that, it gives you the ability to close it without JavaScript. Can't open it without JavaScript, but you can close it without JavaScript. Great, we love that, that's good. So super happy about that. You can also, if you are in a modal and the button is focused, I cannot tell where I am with this. No, stop that. All right. Can I do it? No, it's still not letting me do it. Man, that is aggressive. In theory, if I was not in a slide, if I was not in a Reveal.js presentation, you would also be able to dismiss this modal by hitting the escape key, which would trigger a close event as well as a cancel event. So you would be able to tell, hey, the modal was canceled, don't actually like submit a form or something where it was just canceled, right? So there's a way to be able to tell between those two things. All right, so baseline support for this is, it came out in 2022. It came out 3 years ago. You can use it unless you need to support browsers that are older than 3 years old. Or internet, I know, it was asked in the previous one, who here is using Internet Explorer? Man, that makes me so happy. I love it when nobody responds to that one. That's great. All right, so there's more information at MDN, and Chris Coyer wrote a really great thing over at Front-End Masters about how to animate a dialogue coming in and a dialogue leaving. So there's more resources for you. All right. Let's talk about the inert attribute. Yay. The inert attribute causes things to disappear from the accessibility tree and not do anything. That's it. That's all it does. It is, don't use it. Is my advice. Let's talk about why you shouldn't use it, right? Because if I try to click on this or click on that, nothing I can't even select the text. Like it eliminates it. It's still visually there, but you might as well have an image with no alt text as the thing. In fact, actually an image with no alt text might be slightly better because the accessibility tree would at least go, there's an image, right? With this, it just doesn't exist as far as the accessibility tree is considered. So let's talk about what specifically inert does. And this is straight from the MDN docs. It prevents the click event from being fired when a user clicks on the element or any of its children. Prevents the focus event from being raised by preventing the element from gaining focus. So this allows you to control where you're focusing things. Prevents any of the contents of the element from being found or matched during any use of the browser's find in page feature. So if you do Control F when you're in a page and you try to search for text, if it's inside of an inert element, you will not be able to find it. It prevents users from selecting text within the element, akin to using the CSS user select to disable text selection. So basically, once again, you cannot highlight text to copy it out. Prevents users from editing any contents of the element that are otherwise editable. So for instance, text areas, or if you have content editable or whatever the attribute is. And it hides the element and its content from the assisted technologies tree by excluding them from the accessibility tree. So if you have screen readers, it will just look like a blank thing. There will be nothing. So why am I saying don't use it? Do not use inert unless you are sure that is what you want to do, right? A good use case for it is if, for some reason, you're having to support. No, that doesn't even make sense. I was going to say if you were having to support a browser that doesn't support Dialog, you could use inert, but you can't, because if you have inert, you also have Dialog. So at that point, the discussion is moot. But it's that you can, if you are doing something where you need to control the flow of where things are being focused. So for instance, if you are making your own modal that is not a dialog, you can now put inert on everything else so that you cannot jump the focus from the modal to the rest of the page. And then once you are done with the modal, you will then need to remove the inert attribute. It is my advice that you do not start a page loaded with the inert attribute in case something goes wrong and then nothing on the page will work at all. This is one of those things where it is good to know that you have this tool, and it is good to not use it. When you need it, you really need it. When you don't need it, if you're only kind of sure that you need it, you don't need it. For instance, if you have a button in a form and you're like, hey, I don't want people to use this button because the form is an invalid state, do not use inert on the button, because then there's just not a submit button at all. Like, there's nothing in the form. Use the disabled attribute, or don't disable the button and make it so that the form will not submit until it is in a valid state. That's it. That's my talk. Sorry. I like that this one exists. I get very cranky that it exists because of the amount of abuse that it could possibly cause. So yeah, anyway, it has good support. Like I said, if you can use Dialog, you can use inert at this point. It has been around since 2023, and it works on all of the modern browsers. And if you want more information, there's a lovely MDN thing and a lovely article by Emma Twersky at web.dev about the inert attribute. Okay, Popover API. Who's heard of Popover API? Great. Who thinks that they're excited about Popover API? Good, it's a different set of hands. I like that. Okay. So the Popover API kind of goes with like dialog stuff. Popovers end up in the top layer as well. We'll start there. Popovers end up in the top layer. And popovers allow you to have a controlled thing pop up. And this is not for like drop-down menus, in like not like selects. You shouldn't try to replace all your selects in a form, because selects have extra features, right? Because you need to be able to have like a value with it. But you should be able to use this as a as like tooltips or like menus, right? So the way that this works is that you make a thing that can be focused and clicked, like a button, React devs, and you make it so that you give it an attribute called popover target, and you give it an ID of an element that has an ID and popover. So by default, popover makes the thing disappear, and then when you click on the button, it displays. And then when you click on the button again, it goes away. And if you click on the button, it shows up. And if you click somewhere not on the button, it goes away. That is how Popover works. Okay? by default, it's going to display in the middle of the screen. That's not useful. There's some more options, though, right? We have some more options. You can put the popover into manual mode, which gives you the ability to show, if you want to. You can have the action of a button be to show the thing, at which point, if you click on that button, nothing happens because it's already showing. If you click off of it, though, it also will continue to show because we've now removed the ability to do a light dismiss of not clicking on the popover. You have the toggle, which will do the thing that you expect it to when you click a button, is that it'll show it and make it disappear. And then if you click show, you can also do hide, and hide will just make it hide. And once it's hidden and it won't come back. OK. So you have multiple options for Popover API, which is great. That's good. It's still displaying in the center. The support for this is as of January. So maybe don't. If you need to support like the last 2 years worth of browsers, right? Maybe don't. Maybe don't. I believe that there is a polyfill for this. And when I say polyfill, what I mean is there's a JavaScript library that you can be like, use this JavaScript library, and it will implement the Popover API. But maybe don't. If you are wanting to like gracefully add this into your code base, you can with a polyfill and a little bit of love. And then maybe you don't have to do some of the logic. But like I said, we were displaying things in the center. That's not useful, right? If we click this, I think this is the direction I was going. If we click this, it's in the center. That's not very useful as a tooltip. You want the tooltip to be right next to the thing, right? So what we really need is a way to position things next to the element that is triggering it. So they have invented a new API called anchor positioning, which allows you to define a thing as being an anchor. So for instance, our button has an anchor name of my tooltip, and then our tooltip has a position anchor of my tooltip. So now this element is anchored to this element, and it knows, oh, if I need an anchor value, that's the thing to pull from. And then you can specify where you want it positioned based on that. There's some other features of this, but this is an HTML talk, and I'm not going to get too deep into the CSS of it. Just know there's a more rich and complex set of values you can use here to have it have fallbacks if you are too far on one side of the screen or on another side of the screen or what have you. But now when we click this button, it shows up right next to the popover shows up right next to the button that we have clicked. So this is very handy and very useful. And you can anchor two things. It doesn't just have to be popovers. It can be anything. You can anchor two things together. Anchor API is coming along. We got some stragglers. Hopefully by the end of the year, once again, hopefully by the end of the year, this will be available. But this is anchor positioning is going to be a big one, right? We're going to be able to do a lot of things that we weren't able to do before using anchor positioning. Now, I had mentioned before that with Dialog, in order to open a dialog, we have to use JavaScript, right? So in order to make this button trigger that dialog, we have to use this JavaScript. People have said, hey, what if we just put a popover thing on the dialog and then use the Popover API to trigger the dialog? That works. You can do that. Not a problem. But that only works as though you're triggering the show and not the show modal. So we have another API. It is called the Invoker Command API, which is a little bit more generalized. It's very similar to the Popover API, but it's for popovers and dialogues and any future thing that might be able to be triggered. So the way that this works is that you say, hey, this is the command for my dialog, which is the ID of our dialog. And then you say command show modal. And it will do show modal. There is no JavaScript here. This is just HTML. Yeah, yeah, very excited. It's great. I love this. This is I'm super excited about this. So now we have a way to be able to open things in just HTML and close things in just HTML, and you don't have to write any JavaScript anymore. Yay! This is what we want. This is good. Yes?
Command 4, that my dialog, does that also work with classes?
So, that's a great question. No, it doesn't. It has to be an ID selector. That is a good question. So the question was, does command 4 work with classes? And the answer is no, it has to point to an ID. So it works in the same way that 4 works on a label for an input. You would need to be able to specify it. Fantastic question. Thank you. Yes?
So on the Discord, it's a question, what happens if the popover element is a child of the trigger?
What happens if the popover element is a child of the trigger? Something. You would still, I believe that you would still have to use the popover target attribute, but it would still go into the top layer. So that would be a way that you could do stuff. So thank you. Great question. Cool. All right. So baseline support for this. This one is limited. This one is very, very new. They're still arguing about it a little bit in the standards body, so probably don't use this. A good fallback would be to use the Popover API for now, and maybe a little bit of JavaScript. For more information about the Popover API and information about popovers and dialogues, there's a great CSS tricks article that I would recommend. All right, attributes and attr. So I saw a few hands saying that they've used attr. If you haven't ever used attr before, here's what it's used for. You can take an attribute and put it as the content of before or after. That's it. That's all it does. It's a CSS function, and that's all that it does. So in theory, you could make attributes that you could then like dynamically add a before and an after and whatever, and you could localize it and all of that fun, good stuff, which is great. Not very useful. And part of that is because attr always returns a string. And for those of you who don't know, CSS is a strongly typed language. If you give a property the wrong type of thing, it will error out. CSS, however, errors gracefully. So it doesn't actually throw an error, it just doesn't use the thing. So what the new attr syntax does, and why we're talking about it, is that it allows you to say what the type is of the data that you are wanting to use. So I have a div. I have said data text hello world, which is still doing the old school thing that we were originally doing. But I now have a data color, which has a color value in it of HSL, which is white, because I've set everything to 100%. And I've made a style attribute, or a style selector here for data color. And I said, hey, the color is attr data color of type color. We also have data BG color, which does the background color, same thing of type color, and it will then style it based on that. So that is all the CSS that's in here, and this is now styled based on the attribute values, which means that you could re-implement the font tag if you wanted to. I don't recommend that. The allowed types that you can use in the type function are angle, color, custom identity, image, integer. There's a whole bunch of number ones and transform function stuff. One notable exception from this list is URLs. You cannot use a URL. You will not be able to do images this way. I am telling you all that now. I have tried desperately to make it work and hack it in somehow. It doesn't work. So this is still very useful in very limited contexts when you're like, I have a thing that's a thing on the thing already. Why can't I just use that in the CSS? Now you can. Baseline support. is very, very limited. It works in Chrome. They don't even know that it works in Chrome. That's how limited it is. The data probably needs to be updated a little bit. So it is very new. Probably don't start using this quite yet. But no, it's on the horizon that you will be able to do this if you need to, which most of us don't anymore. It's about 10 years too late. It's fine. But we're getting there. For more information, Una has a really good article about advanced adder. All right, declarative ShadowDOM. Now, this was covered in the last talk, and I'm going to go through it really fast because he covered it a little bit. I'm going to show you something really stupid you can do. Please don't do it. So declarative ShadowDOM, basically, a custom element allows us to define our own HTML element, right? Does everybody understand that concept? Yeah? Everybody? Yes? Do I have any heads nodding? Yeah? Yeah, okay, cool. So we can define a custom element by extending an HTML element, and then we can attach a shadow root, and now we have some shadow DOM, which is scary because it's shadow, woo, and we can do stuff to it, right? So now we have an element called my-element that will look like a box with a blue border. It's very fun and exciting. What the problem is that if your JavaScript is slow to load, like here, where I am waiting to load the custom element until I click on register my element, it shows up just as nothing. Now, you can style it in this state so that it looks close to what you're supposed to be doing. And when you register it, it'll turn into the correct thing. But until you register it, it doesn't do anything. That's where declarative ShadowDOM comes in. It's a way to define a template, and you say shadow root mode open or closed, and then you can toss in the things that you want to go in there, and then it will be styled. So you can see here, I have styled the declarative ShadowDOM with a red border, and when we register my element, the border turns blue because we have overwritten it, right? Super great, super useful. Now, one thing that you could do, but the problem with this is that you do have to put that declarative ShadowDOM in each element, and so that blows up your thing. So one option is that we can do just the ones that are above the fold, right? If you can figure out, like, all right, we only need it to go down to about, here, you can not do declarative ShadowDOM for the rest of it, and you're just going to assume that by the time you get down there, it'll have loaded. And so when you do that, you can also do some fun stuff of you can then look for, hey, does this thing have shadow DOM already? Does it have a shadow root already? If it does, don't do anything. If it doesn't, then we'll make a new one and we'll insert all of the stuff that we want to. And so what you get there is that you get an effect of two things that are the exact same web component, but they have two different types of shadow DOM. So, if you want to go cause chaos, have some fun with that. The last thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you that shadow DOM you can apply to certain default elements and change what they do. Please don't do this. I have made an H1 element into a marquee. I attempted to do it the other way around to make a marquee into an H1, and apparently marquee is one of the ones you cannot use declarative ShadowDOM with, which if somebody would like to fix, I would be most grateful for. So you can do this. You can apply it to certain elements that already exist. I wouldn't recommend it, though. Pretty good support since last year, so you can kind of start using this. Once again, this is sort of a progressive enhancement of custom elements, right? Browsers that have it will be able to improve the experience of, loading stuff. And then the fallback is, well, you just don't get any styles until the thing finishes loading. All right. For more information, web.dev has a really great one, and MDN. All right. We're going to go back in time a little bit. Since the year 1995, humanity has achieved a lot of incredible and remarkable things. We've sequenced the entire human genome. We have made 23 missions to Mars. We have taken a photo of a black hole. We have proved the existence of the Higgs boson. The entire life cycle of the iPod happened. The thing we haven't been able to do, though, is make our designers happy when they say, can't the drop-down look like this? The Select was came out first time in 1995, and so for 30 years, we haven't been able to do this without some weird workarounds. Until now. We can now style the select element. So I'm going to run through this really quick. To do this, we've had for a while the ability to actually style the select button, right? It's the drop down that's the problem. When I click on this, it pops open this really ugly thing that's like it's the operating system. It's not part of my design, so that's no good. We don't want that. So what we do is that with this new syntax, and we're going to be looking at a lot of CSS, sorry. I know it's an HTML talk and you came here for the HTML and not for the CSS, but you got to get some CSS in here. So the way to make this into the new thing, because this is an opt-in feature, is appearance base select. This is the magic line that causes it to work differently. When I now click on it, it should work, but it doesn't because I have not used the right selector. You see, I'm targeting the select element. I'm not targeting the picker. So in order to do that, we have to add an extra new thing, : picker select. And now we can style the picker directly based on that. And we get a select that is styled appropriately to the way that I want it to be, because I think that hot pink is a really great color. And once again, this is the HTML. This is all that I've done. I've turned on some CSS, and that is what you get. But we can go further. One of the challenges that we've had is that we've not been able to put additional content inside of a select. That's actually the beauty of the select in this case, is that the fallback for all of the things I am showing you is that it's just a select. It's all that it is. So we've been able to put emojis in there, but what if we want to be able to turn this emoji off when it's picked, right? So with the new stuff, there's a new element called selected content. And to use it, you would put a button with selected content inside of your select. That way, if the browser does not have the ability to render appearance-based select, that button disappears. And nothing happens. Nothing new happens. It's just the same old select. But we can change our CSS, please work, to be able to do this. Come on. There we go. All right. So what I have done is that I have targeted the icon inside of our selected content. So selected content clones whichever option is picked. And so now the option has two spans inside of it, but the selected content only displays one of them. So we can do a whole bunch of styling things based around that. We can apply grid to this picker dropdown. We can make it so that it's, going in a box instead of like a thing. Like there's the possibilities are endless now. You want an emoji picker that has 5 options that go in a circle? Go for it. You can do that. This has been in the works for years. A group called OpenUI has been working behind the scenes. They're a group of experts and browser vendors that have worked together to really nail down what the syntax for this looks like. And originally it was going to be a completely different element, and then they figured out, actually, we should just do it to the select. And so now we're going to be able to have this in the browser. Currently, only Chromium-based browsers have implemented this, but I believe that it should be done by the end of the year. This is one, if you leave with nothing from this talk, this is the one thing that I want you to leave excited from this talk about, because this solves so many problems that we have had for years, and it is extremely, extremely good. So for more information, MDN, OpenUI has the actual full explanation of it, and Adam Argyle wrote a really good article on it over at the Chrome developers blog. That is my talk. Thank you so much for coming. The QR codes goes to the slides. All of the examples are in a CodePen collection so that you can go and just sort of browse through them and fork them and play with them at your leisure. Thank you so much.